Okay.
One sec is good.
Nobody move.
Freeze that smile.
We might be frozen with all of the cold, so.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming too. I mean, I wouldn't probably say that a lot, but thank you for coming at 9 a.m. or 9 a.m. and change. I know it is very early, so I owe every one of you a coffee or tea, whichever you want. Yeah, you know. Plus the hearing is inside, so it's warm. So stick around for that. All right. Good? All right, we're all good? All right. Good morning, everyone! Good morning! I said good morning, everyone! Good morning! My name is Armando Moritz Japelican. I am the Senior Economic Development Organizer at ANHD, the Association for Neighborhood Housing Development. And I am here, and we are here because we are united for small businesses. Woo! Quick history lesson for folks. Almost 2 years ago, many of the groups that are standing here today were on the same steps to announce a political agenda to empower commercial tenants. While some of us came from a housing background, we came together because we recognized that gentrification has always been about more than just housing. We recognize that small business displacement is cultural displacement, and we recognize that the communities of color and immigrant populations who are often disproportionately impacted by gentrification must be front and center in advancing solutions to fight it. And so together, we launched United for Small Business New York City, a citywide coalition to take on this challenge. And on the steps of City Hall back in 2017, our political platform included 4 central demands. 1, expanding the commercial tenant harassment law, which had just been signed into the year before, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. 2, providing legal services to commercial tenants facing harassment and displacement. 3, enacting a penalty on property owners who sit on vacant storefronts. And finally, 4, establishing a city-funded program to create affordable commercial space. And so, since that day on the City Hall steps, the groups standing behind me have committed to organizing and advocating in their communities. They brought together business owners, they provided assistance to those most in immediate need, and they elevated the voices of those most impacted to influence a citywide debate. And so today, we are here because many of these demands have become legislative proposals. Councilmember Vanessa Gibson's bill, Intro 1410, both expands the definition of commercial tenant harassment and replicates the program that was recently won by the Coalition Against Tenant Harassment, the Certificate of No Harassment. Councilmember Mark Levine's bill, 1470, expands the transformative Right to Counsel program, won by the Right to Counsel New York City Coalition back in 2017, to small businesses facing eviction, ensuring that small businesses also have a lawyer when facing displacement. There are many bills, so. Councilmember Helen Rosenthal's bill, Intro 1473, establishes a registry for commercial spaces that remain vacant for more than 90 days, and penalties are placed on property owners for every week of failure to report. And finally, Councilmember Carlina Rivera's bill, Intro 1049, would require the Department of Small Business Services to collect information on every neighborhood district's small businesses every 5 years, thereby informing future policymakers of what protections and programs commercial tenants need into the future. And so we are joined by members of the City Council. Thank you so much for Councilmember Rosenthal for joining us. Can we hear from Councilmember Rosenthal? Yeah! We can make some noise, guys. It's okay. It's cold here. It's cold, so we gotta make noise. Yeah. We are here because we recognize that this fight is not just about small businesses. It is about tenant rights, and it is about the cultural vitality of New York City, right? Yeah. We are here because the legislative proposals being heard in the Small Business Committee are meaningful first steps in a long march to empower commercial tenants. This march will not end today, and it will not end here. It will, and it must, go on for months, years, and decades in every community across the 5 boroughs, right? Yeah! Today is an important moment for New York small businesses and commercial tenants. And while we are excited at what this moment means today, we are not committed to a moment. We are committed to a movement, right? A small business movement, a commercial tenant movement, and an economic justice movement. Come on, can I hear it? Yeah! So at this time, I want to make sure that Councilmember Rosenthal speaks. I want to introduce you, and give you a moment to speak on your legislation. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's hear it for Councilor Rosenthal.
I really want to thank you all for being out here. We've been talking about the loss of our commercial retail space since my predecessor's predecessor's predecessor, which is a really long time ago because their work term limits got So Ruth Bessinger, I know, on the Upper West Side was talking about this, and here we are today. And the reason we're here 20 years later...
Are you talking to the mic?
The reason we're here 20 years later is not for lack of will. I think that legislators have been thinking, pounding their heads against the wall, trying to do something. But now, under the leadership of Corey Johnson, we've come up with a legislative package that'll help us make the first steps to better policy making and realistic policy making. So I'm delighted to be here with the economic engines of New York City, our retail, local business owners. And 2 years ago, what we're building on is a report that the City Council finished 2 years ago, which came to 5 very important conclusions. Do I have to shout? You guys can
Doing good.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so loud. So in New York City, there are over 50,000 retail and restaurant businesses that employ over 600,000 people. These local businesses are an economic multiplier for their own communities, and we know that a higher percentage of their revenues are spent within the local community. Retail and restaurant small businesses are a critical vehicle for entrepreneurship, especially among our recent immigrant population. Retail diversity and character are unique assets that create value and attract tourism. And lastly and importantly, city government must seek and ensure that critical neighborhood service and culturally relevant retail is available in every neighborhood. 2 years ago, my legislation to provide commercial rent tax relief to small businesses passed into law. Today, we're talking about a package of new legislation. I'm proud to sponsor legislation that will require the city to establish a public, online searchable database of all commercial storefronts in New York City. Companion legislation will establish a vacant storefront registry for properties that are vacant for more than 90 days. And finally, I'm sponsoring legislation that will require the city to provide technical assistance to small businesses. These pieces of legislation are part of a comprehensive package that the City Council has put together to protect small businesses and provide solutions to the challenges facing retail in New York City. And most importantly, I want to thank the tireless efforts of ANHD, our small local retailers who come out every time to these rallies, and all of the especially culturally relevant retail that is staying in our community, adding value to our community so we can all, have good quality of life in New York City. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council members. So we've been joined by a couple of folks, but I do also want to make sure that I give voice to some of the great organizing that's been going on. Where's Evie? Evie, you're right here. I want to introduce Evie Virouette, great friend, great ally in this movement, and an organizer with the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition. Let's hear it for Evie.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my name is Evie Virouette. I'm a small business organizer. I also deal with development, also in the Bronx, and I'm proud to be part of United for Small Businesses NYC. from flooding to gates being closed down to locks being changed, which is really, really unfair because it happens in every borough. Landlords are going chaotic. Okay, what they're doing is they're not giving leases, which is something that's really, really bad for small businesses because they need finances and they need other structures in order for them to survive. So one thing I can tell you is elected officials do hold the key to these small businesses. And being that there's a small business package that we're going to talk about, elected officials will have our back.
That's right.
So one thing I can tell you is it's very personal for me. I love my bodega. I love my hair salon. I love my nail salon. Okay, so I'm pretty sure everyone here behind me has their own personal story to tell and to share. God bless.
Thank you, Evie. That's actually a fantastic setup. Councilmember Mark Levine, I want to make sure you have a chance to speak as well in your legislation, and thank you for joining us. So we hear from Councilmember Mark Levine.
Thank you, Armando. Thank you, Evie. Thank you to my amazing colleague, Helen Rosenthal. You know, we don't just have one eviction crisis in New York City, we have two. I've stood on this step more times than I can count with colleagues like Helen and so many others, and many of you in this coalition, to demand action to protect residential tenants.
That's right.
And we are, thank goodness, making some progress on that front. We have a lot more work to do, but evictions of residential tenants are down in this city, thank goodness, in part thanks to right-to-council legislation. But the situation for commercial tenants is dire. The eviction rate from 2018 to 2017 went up, and again in 2019, the rate is rising again, now numbering on average 174 small businesses evicted every single month in this city. This is a crisis that is tearing apart the soul of our neighborhoods. Small business gives our neighborhoods life. It's why we live in New York City. They are part of our cultural heritage. We must do more to protect them. And the small businesses which are getting evicted are disproportionately owned by immigrant entrepreneurs, by Latino entrepreneurs, by immigrants from countries around the world for whom small business has been a path to empowerment for generations in the city. And that path to empowerment is under threat now by rising rents, by abusive landlords, and by a legal system which is tilted in favor of owners. Because again and again and again, we see the most vulnerable entrepreneurs facing eviction, facing harassment without the basic protection of an attorney. So I am so pleased to have introduced a right to counsel bill, not for residential tenants, we already got that. We want to do it now for commercial tenants. So that no tenant has to face the power of a landlord with an attorney without their own protection. Commercial tenants have rights. They have a right to see if the lease is adhered to. They have a right to mandated services like heat and gas and pest control. And most importantly, they have a right to operate their business free of harassment by the landlord. But to assert those rights, they need an attorney. That is the only way they have a fair shot of walking into court and asserting those rights. And so our bill would make sure that no entrepreneur, no immigrant, no low-income business owner would ever have to face those threats again without basic fairness in housing court. And I want to thank Speaker Johnson for fast-tracking this bill. We just introduced it last week. We're having a hearing 5 days later. This almost never happened, and this represents a very deep commitment by our Speaker and by this Council to get some basic fairness for commercial tenants. So I have to go inside now to also chair the Health Committee hearing. I know you care about that. But I'm with you in this fight, with all the incredible nonprofit leaders who are standing up for entrepreneurs, ANHD, the Urban Justice Center, and so many others. Are we going to win this fight?
Yeah!
Let's do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, that's a great opportunity to introduce and mention some of the great groups that have been working on this. I want to make sure that I introduce all the groups in our coalition because you can see many signs, but there are a number of groups. Melanie, can we get a copy of the leaflets? One of the leaflets? There are too many groups, so I have to read it off a list. Otherwise, I'll leave somebody off and I'll feel very, very bad about that. Yeah. So, because we are standing in the cold, but now we have a little bit more sun, I want to make sure to give a shout out to the groups that are joining us here today. These are members of United for Small Business New York City, and so really this work could not be possible without them. And so we can just give a quick shout out for each of the groups. The Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, ANHD. Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A. Shia, CDC. The Community Development Project of the Urban Justice Center. Cooper Square Committee. North Arts Block. The Municipal Art Society. Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition. The New York City Artists Coalition. The Street Vendor Project. The Women's Housing and Economic Development Corporation, or WEDCO. And Volunteers of Legal Service, also known as VOLS. There's no Z organization. We'll get there. We'll get there. And so again, I can't stress enough that this work would not be possible without the coordination of this coalition. We have grown over the years. We are excited to see what happens next. But I think that something that has been brought up a couple times now is the fact that this isn't just about small businesses. This is really about this larger framing of commercial tenants and cultural displacement. And so to speak on that point, I want to introduce Olympia Kazi from the New York City Artists Coalition. Let's hear it for Olympia.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining us and so much for coming. So the New York City Artists Coalition advocates for grassroots cultural spaces. These spaces are disappearing, they are facing an affordability crisis. So we want them to exist in the city. What does that mean? Usually people don't think of cultural spaces as small businesses, but the reality is that there is this crisis in our city. People cannot afford fundamental programs, like an after-school program for your kids. There are grassroots cultural spaces. For instance, a group of ours, the Educated Little Monsters, they do an incredible job on that. And when we're talking about affordable culture, our museums are charging $20, $30, $40. This is horrible. Culture in the city should be affordable. Small businesses do offer that with all sorts of programming. And we have been really happy to join the United Small Businesses. These are all people who understand this need. We share the problems and we're going to share together in finding the solution. We're going to work together and we're going to make sure that we're going to end cultural displacement and we're going to have affordable rents in this city and we're going to save our culture in the future. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that point, we're not just going to share together in problems and we're not just going to think strategically together, but we're going to win together, right? Yes! And so to give a little bit of context of where we have come from over the years, I want to introduce Mia Clay. Where's Mia? There's Mia. Let's hear it for Mia Clay. Mia! Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation and Mia.
Well, thank you. Wow. As Armando said, 2 years ago, we were here on these steps, and some of you were here with us. We've grown. I always tell Armando that United for Small Business NYC is kind of the little engine that no one knows about, but I think folks are starting to understand. This group here really had a lot to do with helping to architect the non-residential tenant harassment law, and that was the first opportunity we saw to kind of really push towards getting landlord-tenant protections for our commercial tenants the way we see for our residential tenants. I'm the director of the Community and Economic Development Program here at Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A, and we've been fighting for the rights of residential tenants for decades. When I joined BKA, one of the things my predecessor asked me, Becky Rose, who is now the executive director, business owners, as you've heard here many times, are our immigrant, low-income, low to moderate income, minority neighbors. They've been providing culturally relevant, affordable goods and services to underserved communities for decades. The threats to rising commercial rents, harassment, and vacancies are threats to our neighborhoods, and they're the threats to our most vulnerable residential tenants. Commercial tenants are our residents, and we must protect them. So thank you everyone for your hard work. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got decades of catching up to do, but I'm happy for this momentum, and let's keep it going.
Just to, again, echo some of those points, there is a lot of potential here in this moment right now and in the work that we have been doing. A lot of the bills that we referenced earlier are taking lessons from what we have seen on the affordable housing fight and on the residential tenant advocacy that's been happening in New York City for decades, really 100 years if not longer. And the fact is that we do have a lot of catching up to do, but we are going to catch up. And it starts with this package. It builds off the work we have done over the years. And I mean, there is only more that we can do. We are excited to take on that work. At this time, I want to make sure that I introduce Akeem Walker, a business owner from East Flatbush, who is joining us today. Let's hear it for Akeem.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Minister Akeem Walker, and I am here today to stand with the United Small Business. I'm here to fight back against unlawful landlords and harassment. It's hard to make away with family when there's someone looking to capitalize off of your hard work. When there's someone on your back telling you that you can't when all you're trying to do is push forward. Everyone here can attest to having to push forward for their families. Everyone here can attest to having a dream. Everyone can attest to having something to gear them forward. Now these landlords in these cities, they're hurting our communities. I come from East Flatbush, a community where I grew up for 20 years. I grew up seeing businesses prosper and businesses fail. I seen a need in my community. So me and my wife, we stepped together and we made it happen. Now we're facing harassment from a strong landlord who has more power than us and who seeks to step on the little guys. But we are here today to say that we will not lay down. We will not give up.
Yeah.
We will fight.
Yeah.
And we will fight hard.
That's right.
And if we go down, we're going to go down swinging.
That's right.
Because these landlords need to understand that we are people who have families to support, and we will not be stepped on, we will not be taken advantage of, but we will stand here, we will unite, and we will fight.
Yeah.
So today I want to say thank you to you all, because if we keep pushing forward, we need to stand together.
That's right.
Standing together, there's power in that. And as long as we stand together, we will fight and we will let our voices be heard. And we will succeed.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
I'm fired up. Are you guys fired up? Yeah! All right. So, there's a lot of intersections of what's happening. There is the residential tenant advocacy, there is immigration advocacy, there is cultural advocacy. But one thing that I think that is worth elevating also is that some of our small business owners are here with us today. And so with that, I want to introduce, no pressure, Mohammed from the Street Vendor Project, who's going to say a few words.
Thanks everybody for coming. So my name is Mohammed Atiyah. I am the co-director of the Street Vendor Project. And as Armando said, we are the smallest ever small business owners. We are the ultimate version that a small business can be. And a lot of immigrant entrepreneurs who come to this country, the American dream, they don't have the capital, they don't have the means to start a huge business, not even a storefront. So what we do, we become street vendors. With the smallest capital ever, we can start the first step, a very minor business, very small business, and a step to their American dream. But the problem that the vending rules are very, very hard. It's very hard to follow the rules. It's very hard to get the business done, but we still fight for it. I can speak of that because I was a vendor for 9 years. So I know how hard it is to be in the street and to deal with the regulation and the permitting process. But much as dealing with having a storefront. That's a whole other world. You need to work many, many years and have a lot of savings and a lot of capital. And then once you're ready to have it, once you're ready to have your own storefront and you want to have a roof on the top of your head, you cannot get it done because of the greed of the landlords. They keep hiking the rents every year in every neighborhood. No matter where you go, forget about Manhattan, Midtown, and downtown. If you go to any other neighborhood where supposedly things are so cheap, where supposedly things can happen easily, you cannot afford to have a store. And that's because of the city is not putting enough pressure on the landlords to keep things in order, to keep things reasonable, to keep the rent reasonable. That's why we started the United for Small Businesses. We really want to fight all of that. We want to fight what's wrong. We want to make sure the city has a room for everybody. It doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, it doesn't matter how big your pocket or small your pocket is, you should be able to have your own business and get your American dream. You don't want to work for somebody for the rest of your life. You don't want to work for billionaires for the rest of your life. You want to have your own small business and be able to expand it. I'm really sorry to tell you that a lot of small business owners we see are going back to the street, and it's really tragedy. So there is a cart in Astoria that I used to eat from. They used to have a restaurant, and what happened? The lease was over and they were evicted. Now, instead of expanding and opening more restaurants, they have really successful business. They are not able to do it. They were closing the store and they went back to the street with a cart. In our office at the Street Vendor Project, every now and then we receive people who want to become vendors because they used to have restaurants for many years and they cannot afford to open again. Why this happens? Why the landlord should be so greedy? Why there's no rule? Why there's no control on them and try to make everybody make a living? That's what we're trying to do here. It's been over 2 years now and we still have a very long way to run. I want to thank all the council members. I want to thank Councilmember Heather Rosenfeld for being here today. I want to thank the leadership of the speaker, Cody Johnson. I want to thank everybody, all of you guys for coming today and uniting to make sure we save our city from this greed. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Please.
Can I just say one last quick thing? You know, as I'm listening to everyone here today, this wonderful cultural diversity behind us, I can't help but remember that we're a city of immigrants. And that if you look back at the history of New York City, what you see is immigrants coming to New York City and staying, bringing their culture, their rich diversity through their businesses and through their stores. And what this is about is the growing divide between the rich and poor, the implications of that on housing, and the implications of that on our retail. And the devastation of that growing divide is felt by everyone in all different sectors of society. So the other night I was at a forum, I was at a remembrance ceremony for the Muslims who were killed in New Zealand. And it was in Jackson Heights at Diversity Plaza. I walked around that community and went from a Sherpa temple to a slew of Thai restaurants to, you know, stores from with products from Southeast Asia. So many beautiful different cultures living together. And as we see the continuation of the divide between the wealthy and the poor, we're going to lose that cultural relevance, that cultural diversity. And that's not what New York City is here. New York City government can take their eyes off. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. We have to keep our rich cultural heritage. We have to keep doing business. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that happens.
Yeah. And so, think that is everybody that we had for speakers. I appreciate everybody being here in the cold. Now the sun's come out a little bit for us. But just again, this is one moment in a larger movement that will continue beyond this place, beyond this day, in every neighborhood across the city. And so I would encourage the council to move quickly on this legislation. I would encourage city government to really decide whose side are they going to be on, because for too long, the city has not played a role in balancing the playing field between the relationship of commercial landlords and commercial tenants. And so this is one moment in a larger movement. I encourage everybody to stick around for the hearing. There's a lot of folks who are going to be giving some great testimony. But are we going to fight? Yes! Are we going to fight? Yes! Are we going to fight? Yes! Let's go win! Yes! Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you for... Oh yeah, questions also, yeah, in case... Sorry. I forgot about that. Sorry, guys. Yeah, questions?
Yes. What's the motivation of landlords to keep the retail spaces empty as opposed to renting them to somebody, maybe a local renter? And how would your legislation change that?
That's a great question. And, I think that's a great question. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Because as we did, we've done a few small business surveys in our district, and what we found is there's a myriad reasons for why storefronts is kept vacant. And the storefronts that are more routinely filled, although there is turnover, are local business owners, local landlords who want to keep the streets lively. And really it is a problem of this yawning divide, because as the buildings get sold off to national, international companies that use these buildings simply as an investment, they're not really looking to care about street life. And it's why we have to make sure that we find the right balance in finding the finding the building owners for keeping that storefront vacant. Right now we've put on a pretty hefty fine, $1,000 a week. That should get the attention of those who are, national chains that are simply buying up real estate. But we're going to have to find that right balance.
As a quick follow-up to that point, because it is a really good question. If we had citywide data, we would have a better answer to those questions. But the fact is that also part of what we are supportive in this legislative package of is legislation to give us more of that data, because essentially what we are working off of is anecdotal evidence and the organizing of groups like United for Small Business. So what we have heard in a lot of cases speaks to the council member's point, specifically that there will be a property owner who will harass and push out a tenant because there is the assumption that, oh, there's a lot of development happening. Oh, there's the opportunity to make a lot more money if I can bring in a chain retailer or a bank to fill in this commercial space. And so they will play that waiting game. They will take the loss in the short term, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, whether it's multiple years, with the assumption that eventually someone will come in and fill that space. But what ends up happening is you have these larger property owners, these multinational companies. I think there is actually even one of them was quoted in the Wall Street Journal recently, and it said, "We see a lot of vacancy in this corridor, and we really like that." That's clearly somebody who doesn't live in the neighborhood. That's coming from somebody who sees this place and sees this community as an investment, not as a place where culture happens, where community happens, where people live and spend their time every single day. And so I think that legislation that addresses this information gap but also holds property owners accountable is a meaningful first step in moving this all forward. Other questions?
Can you have someone summarize all that in Spanish?
I think we might have somebody floating around who can do that, so yeah.
Great, thanks.
Other questions?
Yes. Some small business activists are really pushing for the Small Business Jobs Survival Act. I'm a small business owner. I lost my coffee shop in Hudson Yards in December. And Samantha is right there. She helped me. I had a lawyer. The problem is that if I would have had the Small Business Jobs Survival Act, it would have mandated an affordable lease. It would not have gotten to eviction. So for me, this public hearing honestly is a sham. What really needs to happen is the SBJSA. And what my question to you for City council is. If we're in a crisis where 1,200 businesses closed and 8,000 jobs are lost for New Yorkers, I find that this is a very, very baby step that will not solve the crisis. And all of you should, I mean, if the real solution is the SBJSA, I would be pushing City Council for that. I wouldn't be pushing for, you know, sure, legal representation is a good thing. Sure, a registry is a good thing. But it's a very, very baby step that won't, like, you know, solve the hemorrhaging of the businesses. So
I think that's a really good question. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a perfectly valid observation to be making. One thing that I would think is important for us to think about, though, is the fact that if you look at the housing movement, if you look at tenant advocacy in this city and in this state, really, for the past couple of decades, if not 100 years, there has never just been one bill that moves at a time. There is never just one issue that is addressed by elected officials. And so to think that it is one bill or another is thinking in the mindset that we're fighting for too little. We should be fighting for all of these things. And so the Small Business Job Survival Act has existed for 30-some years. No one has been talking about harassment. No one has been talking about legal representation. No one has been talking about the fact that there is literally no defined rights for commercial tenants. And so to say that we are going to have one bill move and only one bill, and this has to happen first, is the wrong way to approach it, because there is a multitude of issues that are going on.
I disagree. If I would have
had
other
questions, because we can talk. I'm happy to have a conversation, but I think it's worth thinking that there is multiple different legislative solutions to multiple different problems that are happening right now.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to.
No, that's right. I mean, and I think what I would pay attention to, especially, I would listen to the first thing that Armando said, right? We've been working on the Small Business Job Survival Act for 37 years. It's time that somebody, and that we saw leadership, to stand up and do the things that will actually get us to policy solutions that can be passed into law. We want to do something, and the way to do that is this package of legislation that attacks the issue at a variety of different levels. And I don't think you would find a group of legislators over the last 37 years that wants to pass, that knows that passing that idea into law would be a good one. We haven't passed it.
An affordable lease for all business owners?
It's a
that
great
would be
idea,
legislated in law? Are you kidding me? I mean,
going forward. Absolutely.
I disagree.
The question is how we're going to get there. And I want to do something realistic, practical, and now. And that's what we're doing.
Other questions?
Spin it, baby. Spin it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all
See
for coming.
you in there.
Let's go inside, folks. Thank you, everybody.
I've been working on it for 37 years. Obviously, they haven't been working on it.
Yo, 37 years and they